Hey all, Daniel here. We have a great new way for you to reach out to us here at We Watch TV. If you take a look down in the show notes of the podcast, you'll notice a link that says text us a question or comment. The link will open the messaging app on your phone, and from there you can send a text message to us, your favorite variety TV podcast hosts. So if we say something you like or don't like about your favorite show, click that link and educate us on your opinion. We love hearing them, even if they're wrong, and we will make sure to shout you out on our next episode or answer your burning questions. So make sure and check that out down in the show notes. And now, enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, and welcome to We Watch TV, the podcast about the TV that we watch. I am Daniel, and this is another Supercut. If you're not familiar with our Supercut episodes, it's where we take all of our discussions about a specific show from our various podcast episodes and mash them all together into one super episode only about that show. And this episode, we're talking all about Bridgerton, Season 3. And this conversation kicked off in episode 68, that carriage scene.
Speaking of sluts, it's time to talk about Bridgerton, Season 3, Part 1. Now, before we talk about the show itself, in particular you, because I didn't watch a ton of it.
You watched some of it.
I watched some of it. Please just go ahead, stand up on your soapbox, and tell me why splitting seasons into parts is the worst thing that streaming services have ever decided to do.
It's like you can read my mind. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I don't hate it as much as the weekly release.
Okay, I was about to ask you that.
I feel like streaming services are turning into just cable, except for now, instead of buying one package, I'm buying like subscriptions to all the different networks, and it's just insane. So I don't like that at all, because one of the perks when streaming services first came out is that for someone like me who loves to binge watch, I got all my episodes at once. But the splitting of the seasons is driving me crazy. And I see right through you, Netflix. I know why you're doing this, because ever since all the other streaming networks have popped up, a lot of stuff, except for, Suits, which we're watching now, a lot of those old shows have found homes on other networks. So Netflix's main things it seems to be relying on right now, it's reality programs like Love is Blind, and it's original content. When the strike happened, that further delayed stuff. They are finding more and more people jumping ship. They want to make sure you keep your subscription. Hence, streaming of the seasons. Now, thankfully, we only have to wait a month, but that almost is even more of a dagger to my soul, because it's like, well, we know you wouldn't get, which I wouldn't, but other people might that aren't crazy. Like, they were like, oh, we know you wouldn't get rid of Netflix for just like a month, so here it comes. But they did that with like other shows like Ozark, all of that stuff, shows I didn't care about as much, but I still watched. But the shows like what we know they're going to be doing with that 90s show and Emily in Paris later, that are shorter episodes, really infuriate me. The Bridgerton Season 3, we have been waiting over 2 years. I do not count Queen Charlotte. It was a spinoff. While it was very good, it was a spinoff show. I do not count that. This makes me mad. We have been waiting so long. It has been done. We were originally supposed to get it in like December, and then they have the audacity to make it, do it in 2 parts, and it's only an 8-episode season, so I only got 4 episodes. I watched the season twice, because I watched it on Friday and then again on Saturday, because I needed more. And the way they ended it, while it was like the best scene ever, and it just rewarded me as a book reader so much. They ended it on that note, to the fact that, sorry, I know we are excited for the boys. Bridgerton is going to take precedence for me in June, because I'm going to need
that's fine.
to pick it up.
That's fine with me, because you'll just be able to watch it in like an evening and you'll be done.
Boom.
All right, so now take a deep breath. Remember that you've gotten that rage out, and now tell me about that carriage scene.
It was perfect. Everything, right down to the last detail. Okay, so Bridgerton Season 3.
You were actively sweating.
I was. No shame in my game. I was basically sweating. I was so, like, excited and happy and just joyous and like, yes, we're finally getting the carriage scene. Bridgerton works by the books. I am a book reader. Mic drop. And I do think the show has made some improvements to the books because the books are based basically on one Bridgerton sibling and you get like little sprinklings of the others. But the show, they have more of an ensemble cast. So season 1, which I would consider the first book the worst book, but season 1 is the show, the one that hooked me in. That was Daphne and Simon's season. Season 2, that was my favorite book. That was Antony's season, The Viscount Who Loved Me. I think that's what the name of that book. Hope can't remember the name of the favorite book from the series. It's because I'm so overwhelmed with the carriage scene. I don't know why they have skipped Benedict's book and not introduced Sophie yet, but that's for my rant that's coming later in this podcast. But they went ahead and they did Romancing Mr. Bridgerton season 4. That's Colin's book and Penelope's book. And that is my very close second favorite book in the series. Very close.
Wait. Very close second?
No, very close second.
Okay.
Like it's a very close second place. What I mean
So
to
it's
say.
close to your first place.
Yes.
Okay.
Very close. Like within like milliseconds of separation or millipoints of separation. Like not even a whole point. It'd be like a 0.99 separating them. And I think it made sense from a show perspective to go with that one because they really have introduced us heavily to the Featheringtons and Penelope and her story. And before, because I did watch season 1, I committed one of the crimes of I watched season 1 before I read all of the books.
Can I tell you a
Right?
secret?
What?
I watched the Fellowship of the Ring before I read The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I already knew that.
Okay.
But yeah. But yeah, I committed one of those crimes and then I went back and I read all the books before the other seasons came out. And I kind of, like, I knew the show was doing enough, like, and they've done enough to put those characters on. It does make sense because people are very invested in that. And the show revealed who Lady Whistledown is, which it's Penelope. They reveal that in season 1.
Okay.
So with the book,
That's Gossip Girl, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't find out in the books until Romancing Mr. Bridgerton because that's such a big plot
And that's
point.
the 4th book.
And that is the
Wow, that's a ways
4th
to.
book in the series.
Okay. So what I know about what's going to take place probably in part 2 of this season in the books was like
a major
a
plot point.
major thing to take place for him to find out.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be kind of the second half conflict between the two characters. So each book also has a trope. So, and I think Diamond, Daphne and Simon, I guess you could call them Diamond, their trope is one of the tropes that doesn't excite me as much. Like they do the fake dating thing, but they do kind of are very into each other very quickly. The second one, classic enemies to lovers, duh, love it. And then the third one is more of the Cinderella story with Benedict. That's why I think they're holding off on that one. I would like to at least meet Sophie, but whatever. Again, I'm going to complain about that here in a little bit. And then the 4th book is that friends to lovers, which is probably my second favorite type of trope.
Also known as She's All That.
Kind of, She's All That. Kind of, either they weren't friends to lovers, and She's All That, Daniel.
Sure, okay. Yeah,
She's
you're
All
right,
That's
you're
the
right,
glow
you're
up, the makeover, which Penelope does
Yeah.
have. And apparently Daniel's like sees me watching a trailer for this season. He's like, oh, is this the She's All That season? And I guess they had Penelope walk down the stairs. Like one of the producers said they took the inspiration from She's All That. So in terms of like the glow up makeover-y part, yes, you could do like a little bit of She's All That. And it also has the trope of one of them falls first, like she fell first, he fell harder, which I also really like. So those are the kind of, like, I like my tropes to be exciting. I don't like it like, oh, they meet each other, they're instantly into each other. It doesn't like fill me with butterflies as much. I like to see more of that passion. And I was very excited. And as a book reader, it's nice when we get sprinklings of things. Now, the way which apparently we might be getting another carriage scene, which might be more similar to, that one might take place more similar to the events of the book that led up to it. So the way they got to the carriage scene was a little bit different.
Well, yeah, because I remember at one point during that last episode you watched, you screeched out, I don't even know if I was in the room, they're not going to do the carriage scene. They're going to make us wait until June.
They did it. Yay! So, like, the execution of how we got to the carriage scene was a little bit different than it was in the book. But, oh my gosh, I feel so rewarded as a book reader. Because that is one thing I remember when I was like, oh, even before we knew that this season was going to focus on Colin and Penelope, I'm like, I better get my carriage scene. On Reddit, all the book girlies were like, oh my gosh, the carriage scene. When they were teasing the season, the actors were stepped out of a carriage, and I was like, oh my gosh. They know what we're talking about. They know what we want. And they actually did like the lines from the books, and one of the changes that they made was Colin said Penelope's line, like, do you think the carriage could keep going or something? And I thought that was precious. But then he said for God's sakes, Penelope Featherton, are you going to marry me or not at the end? And he pretty much says that in the book, and I was just so excited. But it was hot. It was good. It was like passionate. I never thought that I'd be playing a Pitbull song over and over again. But this show, what Bridgerton does is it takes like modern songs and it puts them to like orchestra music. So this season we had Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish, Jealous by Nick Jonas. We had that ABCD song from TikTok on there. We had a song from Sia.
Later.
I hate you. Cheap Thrills from Sia. Dynamite. That was some of the songs that we had this season. Previous seasons, we've had like Material Girl, Wrecking Ball. So I really like how the show does that. They take that orchestra music, but they did the Give Me Everything by Pitbull for the carriage scene, and it just the tension with the music, the confession. So when Colin finally confesses his feelings, it was just so passionate. He basically tells her, he's like, and when I sleep, all I think about is you. In fact, I prefer sleep because that's like where I know I'll find you or something. And I'm like, oh! So it was so good. What's the Homelander thing? It was perfect.
Yeah.
Right down to the very last detail. And yes, it was a very sexy scene.
Yeah, you got done watching it, and you were like, I am sweating. And I came out here, and like, did you ask me to touch the back of your
said,
back?
No, seriously. I was like, feel my back. I'm sweaty.
Actual, like, I've been working out sweat on your back.
But it was
when you
more,
got done watching that episode.
Don't be dirty, Daniel.
I'm
that
not being
was more
dirty.
from just the tension, and I was just so excited to see a scene play out like that I've been waiting for in the books. And then when Colin actually said the line from the book, like, are you, for God's sakes, like, Penelope Featherton, are you going to marry me or not? I was like, oh, we got rewarded. Like, I feel like as a book reader, we take these little sprinklings, and
Sure.
it was so good. I still think I liked Anthony's "You Are the Bane of My Existence and the Object of All My Desires" speech better, because that just fits my like wheelhouse. But it was, I don't know, there's something about the Bridgerton glow up. Now I will say a lot of people didn't find Anthony Bridgerton hot until the second season. I always preferred him over Simon, maybe because he's a walking red flag, I don't know. And I just loved him so much immediately, even with the big sideburns. But I was skeptical, even though I loved Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. I'm like, okay, how are they going to make the actor that plays Colin hot? Like, I've just not seen it. Like, he has such a little boy face. Let's just say, well done. Well done. I don't know what they put in the waters there, but the Bridgerton glow up is real. Shonda Rhimes has just done well with these people.
Let me ask you a question then. Is it a situation of they're glowing them up for their season, or are they doting them down for the seasons that's not theirs?
I think part of it is that they do, when you have the new male lead, they are glowing them up on purpose. But I also think Colin the actor is older now than when he filmed season 1, which was matured several years ago at this point. But it's like he worked out, he got a tan. I don't know what was going on, but maybe it's just because I was so into the storyline, like suddenly into it. Consider me a fan. And there's this part of the scene in the carriage scene, which they kind of do in like they reference this in the books, where she like touches his hair, and it's just like the face he made when she reaches up after they kiss, the carriage scene, and she like touches his hair, and he just makes this face and then smiles. Oh, that is a man in love. And it was so good. So how many times have I rewatched the carriage scene, would you say?
I know of
more.
4. Yeah, I mean,
way more than that. At least
the
20.
carriage scenes particularly, I know you've gone ham
I've
on.
studied it.
You rewatched the entire season twice, right?
Yes.
Since it came out on
That is correct.
Friday.
Yes.
We were recording on a Monday.
And when you only give me 4 episodes, I was just so happy about it. Like, and I believe the conflict is going to be, which is very similar to the conflict in the book, because actually the carriage scene in the book happens after he finds out she's Lady Whistledown.
Okay.
I think they're going to do that a little differently this time, but I've been told we're going to get the iconic mirror scene, which I'm very excited about because that's another sweet, beautiful, emotionally charged, let's just say, scene betwixt the two characters that I'm very excited for. And I think we might get another carriage scene. They kind of indicated at that, so I don't know if they're going to do that as part of the reveal. The reveal, and I think some people that are not book readers are still a little mad at Penelope because last season, Eloise finds out. Now, Eloise does not find out about Lady Whistledown until the big reveal in the books. Like, Colin is the first, person to find out that Pin is, and they kind of did it a different way with, their friendship. But I'm here to tell y'all that that boy that Eloise liked, that commoner, he does not even exist in the books. I'm just waiting for Sir Philip to show up again because that's Eloise's story. So I think we're more, forgiving of Penelope because we know more about her character from the books, and we also know just some more details, because I've seen some people that are still a little irritated about that, whereas Eloise was kind of getting on my nerves this season, and she's traditionally been my favorite character. I would really like for the back half of season 2 to have Philip come back in. We have met him briefly in the seasons, but we know that's her story. I don't know I think for season 2, obviously this is going to continue. They've introduced us to Francesca's story. That is book 6. So it'll be very interesting. Other things about the season. Let's talk about what I didn't like.
Okay. I'm in. I'm back in.
You're back in. The Mondrake storyline, that, those people don't exist in the book. I don't know. I felt like they were the Matt Donovan of this season. My Vampire Diaries people, we all know about Matt Donovan. The only human, one of the only characters to survive all the seasons, and they spent so much finale time on Matt Donovan. It's just it's a whole joke, and I felt like they were the Matt Donovans. Now, I do think they've had some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Inheritance, there we go. But it's going to their kids instead. I was a little unclear on that because I really didn't care. I was like, let's get to the actual scenes that matter. And I just feel like we've spent a lot of screen time on them. So I think something with the whole Featherington, they need to produce an heir plot. And that's Penelope's sisters. I think that's going to come up later. I felt like we spent entirely too much screen time on them. So that was one of my main complaints. And then my other complaint is poor Benedict, another rando lady. He seems to be hooking up with some older woman that's a widow. And it's where's Sophie? Where is she? I want to meet her. So I'm hoping maybe the last episode of season 3, they'll have the masquerade ball, and that's where he first meets Sophie. I'm hoping that maybe we can do that because I feel bad. Where is Sophie? While his story might be that cookie cutter Cinderella vibe that we've seen time and time again on shows, Sophie is one of my absolute favorite love interests for all the Bridgerton people. We do know that the Shonda Rhimes, and when they created it, that the one thing that the author Julia Quinn wanted was, she's you can do what you want as long as all the Bridgerton siblings have their original end games intact and have their happy stories. You can figure out another way to get there. So I would like to meet Sophie at some point. So those were the things that I disliked. I would have liked more screen time for Colin and Penelope, but I do feel like we've gotten more screen time for them and their building of their relationship in their other seasons that I was personally okay with it. And I feel like we're going to get definitely more of them together in the back half. I would have liked to seen Colin grovel a little bit more because it starts off where Penelope's a little mad at him from some comments that he had made. I would have enjoyed seeing that more. Things I did like. I actually like Lord Debling. I obviously knew that that's not who Penelope's going to end up with, but I thought he seemed like a very nice man. I would like to see him again. I think he's probably going to die, though, because he's going off on some village to the
Is he not from the books?
Voyage. Yeah, he's not in the books, but he's supposedly going on some voyage.
He's
to Antarctica.
the animal guy, right? That's into all the nature stuff.
Yeah, and I thought that was very interesting because Sir Philip is a big nature guy, but he doesn't do the voyages, so I don't know what's up with that. Cressida is awful in the books, and they actually gave Cressida a little bit of some redemption sprinkling in. She was still kind of bullying Penelope at the beginning, but she and Eloise have struck a friendship, and I think Cressida really does value Eloise's friendship. I liked that they gave her a little bit of redemption. I think that's going to be backtracked with, because obviously she's going to try to take credit as that she is Lady Whistledown in the second season, because the Queen is offering a reward for Lady Whistledown to come forward. And that does happen in the books. Cressa does try to take credit for that. So I'm not really sure, what we're going to do there. But I did like seeing her character be humanized a little bit instead of just a straight up mean girl. I think, I don't know. I thought I was going to hate her and Eloise being friends, but I didn't hate it ultimately. I also liked that Lady Danbury's brother was introduced, and that I think he and Violet are going to hook up. That'll be fun. Violet is the matriarch of the Bridgerton family. I liked that we got some more Kate and Anthony scenes. See, what's the big fat bummer is the guy that played Simon from season 1, I think his name's like Reggie John Page or something, just said he didn't want to do any more Bridgerton because he wanted to go off to be a movie star. I have yet to see him in anything. So we got to see Daphne a little bit last season, but she's not in it at all this season. And I like that the actors who played Kate and Anthony are like totally willing to have some more scenes. You saw one of their scenes.
Yeah, I did.
Still on their honeymoon.
One of the running gags I always say about this show is when I'm in the room seeing it, somebody's doing it.
Oh,
somebody's doing it when I'm in the room.
The first season that I watched a Bridgerton, like, you happened to be there for the honeymoon episode, and every time Daniel would come upstairs, he'd be like, "What are you watching?" And then he was like, "What are you watching?" Every single time.
All right, well, yeah, I didn't watch a ton of this. Now, I did watch maybe the first half of the first episode.
Yes.
And I
was like, this is what we're watching.
As I have aged in time, I have just come to the realization that it is rude and inconsiderate to put down people for the things that they like to watch, because certainly if who am I to throw a stone in the glass house that I live in of the stuff that I can get into watching sometimes.
I like it. It's fun.
But I do have to say, for me personally, this is just not something I can get into. You have shows that you watch that I can get into, and you have shows you watch that I can't. What? And I cannot get into Bridgerton.
This is very much a Regency style Gossip Girl, if you will.
Yeah.
Romance, but there's humor. I feel like this is, not to be sexist, but I think you wouldn't be wrong. And like a lot of men are probably going to be sitting down and watching Bridgerton. That being said, and I try to be the same way as you, there is somebody that I have seen on social media, I'm not going to call them out, and they're the type of person that they are all about the Twilight books and the Twilight movies, but then they will crap on Bridgerton. I'm like, excuse me. You cannot do that if you are such a Twilight fan. Sorry.
I just think you should like what you like, but you don't. That doesn't take away somebody liking somebody else, something else,
yes,
and somebody liking that other thing and not liking your thing doesn't take away from your thing.
Absolutely. People should like what they like and enjoy what they enjoy. The only reason you watched part of it with me was I told you I had a very, very busy week, and I said, listen, I was like, because the episodes dropped Thursday, I held off. Yeah. I'm like, this is my plans on Friday. I'm going to eat our homemade pizza that you made, which was very good. And I'm like, I'm watching Bridgerton while I watch dinner. You can join me or you can go downstairs. I'm only getting 4 episodes. These are my plans. You can be part of the party or not. But this is what I want to do. I've been looking forward for this for over 2 years, and you respected that, and I appreciate it.
Time did you go to bed Friday night? It was like 3 a.m., wasn't it?
Yeah, because after I finished the season, then I had to get on Reddit, and I had to discuss it. Then I had to watch TikToks. Then I had to watch the carriage scene about 10 more times again before I went to sleep. I do, as a book reader, though, again, I want to stress that when they give us like the lines from that book, like the way that Colin got to deliver that line at the end, that was kind of our sizzler. I really appreciated that. But I also really like the differences that the show has done. Now, for Francesca, that is another character. Her book is probably my 3rd favorite book in the series. I really like it. And I think if you are a non-book reader, cover your ears. We kind of start off her book on more of a melancholy note. Like, her husband dies, and we don't get to know him that much. We don't get to know John very much, but we do get to know Michael, his cousin, who she later, that turns out to be her person.
His cousin, not her cousin.
His cousin.
Okay, I'm just making sure I heard you right.
Michael Sterling, John's cousin. And prepare to be hurt, because I too am like, oh my gosh, I really like John. even though I know I love Michael from the books. And I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt even more because of how it happens. Like, she is a widow. Like, she does go through a period of mourning. And the fact that now they're actually introducing us to John first is like, oh, gosh. Because knowing what's going to happen down the road. But they did a recast for the actress who played Francesca because the original actress had other commitments. And I think the recast is fine. I think it fits very, like, Francesca in the books is actually the only one, I believe, to become, like, the diamond of the season. Even though I think Daphne gets it in the show, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think she got it in the book. But Francesca is very introverted, and I felt like this show played that very well. So I was really enjoying those interactions. All I have to say is that Michael in the books is described to be, like, the hottest of all. I pictured Theo James when I read the books.
Even though the diamond of the season was originally picked by Gossip Girl and not the Queen.
I don't know if that was how it was picked. I can't recall.
That's what they said in the show. The 15 or 20 minutes I watched, they made that very comment.
Oh, you're talking about the show.
Yeah, I'm talking about the show,
not the books.
Yeah, I haven't read the books. Are you kidding me?
The Queen did pick. She did pick Francesca as her diamond this season.
But the first time a diamond was picked, they said in the show very specifically that the Gossip Girl picked it first.
Lady Whistledown.
Yeah.
What are you asking me? I don't know what you're asking me.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to be part of the conversation.
Just trying to be part of the conversation. I was just saying about Francesca and her story, and that I am excited for the little sprinklings we've got in there. I really, really, really want either Philip or Sophie to make an appearance for either Eloise or Benedict going forward. I'm really shocked that they continue to make just no references to Sophie because she's so beloved in the fandom, in the book fandom. And Benedict, I feel like everybody seems to really like his character on the show. I think his character on the show is actually more likable than it is in the books. They gave him some of Colin's personality from the books into the show because Colin's more comical. They made him a little bit more serious in the show, and I felt like we kind of got more of book Colin this season as well, which it was really good. And I want to just go watch the carriage scene again right now.
I'm sure you will, but I do need you to pack it up at least until June because you're not getting any more. That's all you got. So you just take that little drip of that carriage scene and just keep on watching it.
Well, what are your thoughts on the split season since you asked me? That's how we can close it. That's how you can be part of the conversation.
I'm going to be honest with you. I have yet to experience a split season for a show that I care about whatsoever. Because they did that for The Witcher season 3. We watched half.
Out of that.
We watched half of the first episode of The Witcher season 3, and we never returned to it. And I haven't had a show do that since. Because all the shows that I'm really interested in have just been mostly like episodic, weekly release. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
Because you didn't love Ozark, we were just into it, but it wasn't.
Especially by the end. I guess it's difficult. I don't know. Do you think it has an effect on the production of the show, or do you think they let them make their shows and then they just split it somewhere? Like, did Netflix know that the end of it?
That's one of the biggest complaints people are having is everyone's like, this season feels rushed, and it felt different. I think they absolutely intended that to be like our cliff. I mean, it does. They
told them, hey, make a cliffhanger at the end of episode 4.
No, I don't think they did.
Okay.
I think it fit that they chose to cut it there. But I think that they filmed this absolutely thinking we were going to get all 8 episodes because I have seen some complaints. Like, everyone was like, oh my gosh, we barely got any of Colin and Penelope. It was supposed to be their season. And then they just cut it right there. Like, what the heck? I think they absolutely – and I feel like if they – like, I look back on the previous season 2, where they could have cut that, and I think people would have really been mad then. I think it was absolutely designed to go longer. Now, I don't know about Emily in Paris, which we're getting, but I think for sure they designed this to be meant to be watched.
All right, well, then I'm going to say this is my statement on your question. I'm going to say the following. Give it to me all at once or do it at a weekly release. Don't do this. This seems like the worst of both worlds.
I think in a weekly release, though, I would have been starved for content.
Right. Well, I think there are some shows in this day and age that just don't work in weekly release. Like, they just don't work that way.
The first season of Bridgerton, I watched it all on December 26th.
And so Netflix's
the second season,
conundrum,
I watched it in a day. I would have watched all 8 episodes Friday
I know you
night.
would have. Netflix's conundrum is they want to make sure you're there subscribed
Yes.
for at least 2 months, but they know they have a show that is really not particularly good in a weekly release format. So what do you do?
And I don't really think, other than their reality shows, Netflix has done the weekly release.
No, they haven't.
I'm very glad that we are getting The Bear all at once.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the weekly release. I feel like I thought there was another show that they did that we both cared about in 2 parts. Now my brain is just mush.
I can't think of it, but maybe
Obviously
you'll come
didn't
up with
care
it at
that
some
much.
point.
And we finished our conversation in episode 72, The Boys Are Back in Town.
All right. Well, now that we've got you all revved up,
Oh.
we might as well jump into TV.
Okay.
And we can't talk about TV without talking about the major life-changing, earth-shattering events that took place at the end of May, which was, of course, part 2 of
That
Bridgerton.
was in June. Part 2 came
Oh,
out in
June,
June
okay.
after vacation.
Well, part 2 of Bridgerton is out. You've watched it, what, twice now?
Like 3 times.
3 times all the way through. I'm going to just
It's
step
not as good
away
as part 1.
and just let you go.
Okay.
How was it?
There was the best of times and the worst of times. And I'm going to be a little bit honest, it was a little disappointing. Especially coming off part 1. That was so good. And I was willing to forgive them for some stuff in part 1 because I was promised so much more in part 2. Basically, one of the reasons why I think season 1 is one of my least favorites, even though that's what got me into it, is because we hardly got anything other than Daphne and Simon, and they're like one of my least favorite Bridgerton couples. But and then like with Canthony in season 2, they had a little bit less screen time, and I was a little annoyed by that. I was like, whatever. They still had a decent amount. I wanted to get more Colin, Penelope, and at some points they almost felt like side characters in part 2, and that really irritated me. Now one could be like, oh, we've been introduced to Colin, Penelope, and you've seen more of their like relationship and friendship in the other 2 seasons, so I could see that argument being made, but I felt like we needed more and we didn't get as much. Now what we did get was good, honey.
So let me be clear. From the main character shipping of the episode of the second half, you're happy with what you got from them.
I wanted
you
more.
just wanted more. But the
Yes.
things you did get with them, you were satisfied with.
Pretty much, yes. What irritated me was some of these side character stories that ended up not even meaning anything in the end. I'm like, what was the point of this? Like the Mondriches, I think that's how you say their name. I kind of complained about this in episode 1. Beautiful couple. I thought I was like, something's gonna come up, why their storyline mattered in the second part. It didn't. I still don't. It's like the Matt Donovan of this show. If my Vampire Diaries people will know, just like useless. Like, what is the point of it? And I kept like waiting and waiting and waiting for it like to come together. I was like, well, surely there's a reason why they're getting so much screen time. Nothing really panned out. So we didn't get like of all the leads. I think somebody like did the math for each lead season. This has been like the least that we've gotten of the 2 leads. And that was kind of annoying. But what we did get was really good. We did get the mirror scene from the book. I was very excited. I mean, at least we're getting some stuff from the book that they've just decided to pitch off of a cliff, which we'll talk about that later. We got the mirror scene. It was very like intimate and like very well done. I almost felt like I was like intruding on like the actor's privacy. Like, because I felt like it just seemed very real. Like, it was like, oh. So, like, you know how, like, hot and, like, charged the carriage scene was? This was very, like, intimate and, like, just, like, down to the, nothing. And it did play out beautifully, but it was much more of, like, a romantic type of thing. And it lasted a good bit of time. That was a good scene. I feel a little irritated by the way they handled some of the conflict, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But Colin and Penelope, their little friendship moment in the church where it's announced they're going to be married. And then they do like a little dance. That was cute. Their wedding scene was fantastic. Like, because he already knows the secret at the point about the wedding.
Right.
And they've
That she
already
is
they've
Lady
already made
Whistledown.
out after
Yeah.
that. Still kind of mad at her. But like he sees her walking down the aisle, can tell she's nervous because everyone's looking at her. And he gives her this nod. And then she smiles. and they played, you know how they do the instrumental music in Bridgerton?
Right.
We got Coldplay's Yellow, which is, I feel like we manifested this on Reddit like years ago before scripts were even done for this particular season. And that was just chef's kiss. Then at their wedding breakfast, which would be like what we think of as a wedding reception, they danced to Taylor Swift, You Belong With Me. That was a perfect, gorgeous scene. It was beautifully done because when they started dancing, they did that camera where like it looked like it was just the two of them.
Yeah.
Nobody else in the room. Gorgeous. And I wanted more of that. I wanted some more romantic scenes. I do have to give you some credit. When we were watching
Little Old Me?
I think it was episode 6, you were like, hey, that's the name of the book this season is based on, because they named episode 6 Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. And how you remembered that and knew that. Of all the stupid stuff that you forget, I'll send you out to Walmart. You forget 2 seconds later what you went there for, but you remembered that. So everybody give Daniel a round of applause.
I don't deserve it, but thank you.
It was really good. So the conflict, I would have liked that to have been solved a little bit more how it was in the book. Like, Colin definitely had a right to be angry with her, but they had him mad for too long to suit me. Like, a little bit, like, he would not get mad, like, you would seem like he's over it, because he'd be over it at the wedding, and then it would get brought up again, and he'd get, like, re-mad about the whole thing. I'm like, what are you doing?
I don't know anybody like that.
Be quiet. But it turns out, like, a lot of Colin's issues with it was more of a place of his own insecurities, and
Sure.
they kind of touched on that on the book, was that he was jealous of her, that she's this published author and she's done all this stuff, and he just is trying to find his place in the world, and he admits that at the end, and he has a beautiful love declaration at the end. So we got 2 love declarations from Colin, one in part 1 and one in part 2, and he's like, you know, if like loving you, like somebody like you is like, you know, I've done pretty well, and I'm going to live a happy life. I don't know exactly what it says, much better and eloquently than how I'm saying it. So all of their scenes were good. I like the way that their story did play out on screen. I just wanted more since it was their season. I felt like it was a little bit like underserved. Like we needed more content from them, less of the side stories.
They're weaving in more of the side stories each season, it seems like, from what you're telling me.
But you would think they'd make sense. Like, for example, Benedict had a threesome. Can I say that on the podcast?
Sure.
With Lady Tilly and another dude, and we were hoping, but I don't think the new showrunner's going to do it, that Benedict will finally get his focus in season 4. But these 2 characters, they don't. I mean, I could have seen like the one scene with them would have been fine. I didn't need to. It's like, how long did this event take place for Benedict? Like every 5 seconds, it was switching back to that. Like I could have done a little less of that. Because at some point, it's like, okay, that's way too much. We get it. You know what I mean? And I don't care at all about Lady Tilly. I don't care if I ever see that character again. She does nothing for me. She's boring. And then the Mondriches, like, what was their storyline for? Like, it just felt not, like, it felt like there was a lot of, like, stuff that could have been made the cutting room floor.
Sure.
To make room for your leads. Other things I liked, the Featherington family. I need the sisters and Portia to stay on the show. Something I realized while watching Portia, Penelope's mother, she is Julie Cooper coded, but of yesteryear. Best character growth that I have seen of the characters, strictly speaking, from the show, and just the evolution of all of them. And like, I don't know, they start off, they're super annoying, Portia and her sisters, in the early seasons, and then I just came to love them all so much. Like, my favorite scene probably from the entire part 2 was Penelope's sister Philippa, and she's like, release the bugs, but they're butterflies.
I saw that part.
And it's like right after the reveal to kind of break the tension.
Yeah.
And then like you could tell that even like Prudence during the wedding scene was like actually crying happy tears of actual joy, not envy in that point, because she was acting jealous of Penelope a lot, but like that was an actual moment of
my
happiness.
impression of those 2 from the very limited watching I saw was they're kind of like the evil stepsisters from Cinderella. They're not stepsisters, but they kind of are fulfilling that role. I feel like.
And somebody totally came for me on Twitter about that when I said, no, Benedict's story is the Cinderella season. And they're like, no, it was not a book reader. They're like, well, Penelope is clearly the Cinderella season. I'm like, no, but Benedict's season really is the Cinderella season. And they totally brought that up as a point against me.
Oh, well, that's not what I'm doing. So just be aware. I'm not arguing with you on the internet. I'm talking to you here in our podcast studio.
Yes. But I could see that, but they're not like terribly cruel, and Penelope wasn't like Cinderella, like Sophie, Benedict's alleged love interest will be. Who knows what they're going to do with him, since this show might as well not be called Bridgerton anymore. But I liked
security.
Another storyline that I did like, and then I'll get into the criticisms before it all went to crap, was I liked getting to see Francesca and John's story, because in her book, when he was wicked, we don't really get much of John. Like, he dies. Spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. He's going to die. And she loved him very much. She's left a widow. And a lot of her journey is the path to second love. She also struggles with infertility. It was a very impactful book for those, two reasons, and that it was very different. And so her story is mostly focused on Michael Sterling, who is my favorite. I say Anthony Bridgerton is my favorite Bridgerton male. My favorite lead in the book series, hands down, is Michael Sterling. He is the least toxic of all the men that have ever appeared in the book series. I just pictured him. He's pictured, even there's a scene where Sophie and Kate, Benedict and Antony's wives, are talking about how hot he is. So, like, he's supposed to be like I always pictured Theo James, for example, when I read the book, of like who I pictured as Michael Sterling, like just unbelievably gorgeously hot and handsome. But that's it. So you didn't really get to know John, is what I'm getting towards. And I really liked it that we got to see more of John and Francesca. And I'm like, man, this is going to hurt, because Francesca is devastated when John passes away in the book. And it's going to really hurt to have to, now that we're getting to know John on screen, and they're both have more of an introverted type of relationship. And I'm like, I really like how they're doing this story, and that they're showing that not all love has to be crazy like Colin and Penelope and dramatic like Kate and Antony or Daphne and Simon, that sometimes you can have just that calming, quiet love with somebody. And then the show was like, you know what? We want to do some shock value. Pure shock value. Now, I want to start out by saying, I'm like holding up my finger right now because I'm deeply passionate about this. I love a lot of what the show has done in terms of diversity, inclusion. In the Queen Charlotte story, I'm totally blanking on his name right now, but her, like, what's it called? Her what?
Her butler?
Yeah, that type of, like, a butler person. I don't know if that's his actual title. His storyline with his romantic partner was King George's butler, or whatever you call it. Loved their storyline together. I thought, and I see it, and I have a point here, and I'm like, okay, that was great that they did that. Then I thought maybe, like, Cressida, for example, like, she could have been a character that could have been possibly with a woman. But then I also see people's points. You want to see representation, not just in side characters. People want to see it in their main characters. I get it. I hear you. And I think it could have worked. Not the way they're doing it. We've already had sprinklings since season 1 that Benedict could possibly be into men or possibly be bi. We saw it on screen this season. Eloise. A lot of people don't like Sir Philip. That's probably he's probably my least favorite male in the Bridgerton books, Sir Philip. Even though I pictured Henry Cavill as playing him when I casted him in my head, but whatever. He's probably and like with the way they've been writing Eloise and Benedict for the show, I was like, okay, that'll be a great opportunity for one of those two characters. I do want to start by saying that a lot of book fans, if those are your two favorite books, I totally understand you. I hear you that you want to see your favorite book couple come to life on screen. So I am in no way, shape, form, or fashion, to quote our dear Governor Jim Justice of West Virginia, no way, shape, form, or fashion saying that, haha, it doesn't make sense. You guys, I don't feel bad for you at all if you don't get your book story. But from what we've seen written on the show, Benedict, Sophie ended up being a man instead, that could have worked out. if they have Eloise with a woman or with another man that's not, which I know people want to see representation, but a lot of people liked Eloise and Theo. That's a change I could have been okay with. Really, I honestly thought they were leaning that way with Benedict since season 1. They had all the sprinklings in. Everything was there. And then they decide, we've for years been dreaming about who would play Michael Sterling. They're like, you know what? We're going to take the best male from the series and we're going to erase him. I feel like Michael Sterling is dead. So we have the scene at the end where Francesca and John are at the butterfly ball, and he's like, oh, you can meet my cousin. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Now, I had heard a rumor that they were going to do this, and I thought the rumor had been dispelled. And then to find out that what they actually did was true, I cried. I was so, like, devastated that they would erase Michael Sterling like that. So she's like, I'm Michaela Sterling. Give her a better name than Michaela. That's stupid if we're going to do that. And then I thought to myself, I was like, okay, all right, I can make peace with this change if the following hadn't happened. So first off, I thought, all right, Michael Sterling was so perfect in the books that obviously in real life there are no perfect men like that. So why not cast a woman? I see you. I see that point. My issue with it is Francesca's reaction to the whole thing. Francesca, in the books, was very in love with John. She did not have a wondering eye. She did not know that Michael, the moment he met Francesca, it was like, that was it for him. But he kept it a secret. He buried it down. He was supportive of his cousin in his relationship. There was never cheating, never anything like that. Never any side glances between the two of them. Francesca had no clue of his feelings. She didn't develop feelings till much later. She did really love John. Well, they decided to just crap all over Francesca and John. All over it. And I went ahead and rewatched some scenes. She does make an ick face after their first kiss. Like, she's kind of like, she clearly makes a disappointed face. Then, when they have her meet Michaela, it's not Michaela that's just infatuated instantly upon meeting Francesca. It's Francesca. And people could be like, oh, well, maybe Francesca was just shy, nervous. No, they made us have a whole point of a conversation where Violet, Francesca's mother, is saying, like, when she and Edmund met, she could barely remember what her own name was, and she could barely form a sentence. Well, Francesca's like, I'm Francesca Bridgerton, Kilmartin. Francesca was immediately taken with Michaela. So basically, they just dumped on all of her story with John that we got to see. That was sweet. They crapped all over that. They've made it almost like, and I know I've talked to people in the community, especially the community of like people that are bisexual, and they say one of the things they hate most about when they are represented on TV is infidelity. Sometimes they feel like that is thrust upon characters, and it's true if you watch. And that's how because a lot of people do have, like, even people in the lesbian, like, gay community, like, they sometimes, if you notice, they'll have issues with people that are bisexual as well. And that's one of the criticisms that I have seen. Have you heard that before?
I have, yes.
And it just makes Francesca's like, how many days are you married? Like 2 days? And she's giving a wondering eye, like, instantly. And that's not how that storyline played out. So I could have made a little bit of peace with it because I started to think about it. And I was like, okay. Until I noticed that again. And I'm like, no, they're crapping on everything. And I don't know how they're going to address infertility. That was such a huge part of her book that resonated with a lot of women. It just felt like it was done for pure shock value. And at this point, I'm just going to have to separate it. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, as a book fan, it sucks feeling like Michael Sterling is dead. I'm never going to see him on screen. I was very upset about that. I was very depressed about that. I'm happy for people that are getting their representation. I understand it. I get it. You don't want to, while you're fine with side characters, you want to see a main character. I understand it. I'm right there with you. I wanted Loki to be with, what was his name?
Morbius. Yeah.
I was a huge shipper of them. Again, I stress, I was fully waiting for Benedict to be the one that got the representation story. And I'll say this for the Benedict book fans. Sophie's one of my favorite female leads from the books. Somebody's storyline was going to get altered, but going off of what was presented to me on the show, there was absolutely no build-up that am I to believe, like, oh, introverted women must be, like, bisexual, like, or maybe even, like, lesbian, like, I don't know.
And it just felt like they did that just to get a reaction out of people and to stir some things up. I think it's terrible that the new actress, by delivering her one line, has getting hate already. Don't hate on her. You can be upset about the change. I'm upset about changes. The actress that plays Francesca has apparently had to turn off her comments because people have been sending her hate. It's not their fault. They're doing their jobs. If you want to blame anyone, blame the showrunner. She gave out an interview and she's like, I saw myself a lot in this book, so I decided that'd be the perfect story. That's not what you're supposed to do. I hope they can do a great job, but what the most disappointing part of that is not the gender change. It's just the change to John and Francesca's love, in my opinion. And that's where I have issues with it. And just based on the storytelling we were seeing, they had golden opportunities to still give representation, but follow through with good storytelling. And this just seemed like an attempt for shock value and to get the fan base riled up. And it makes me think it's another reason why they waited for it to be in 2 parts, because a lot of people would have been upset about it. And it sucks to be upset about this and be told you're homophobic if you were upset about it. I can't stand that. I feel like you went through something very similar when one of your favorite books was in a movie. Like if you were upset about a character change, you were called like racist. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. The Dark Tower movie, which by the way, the worst thing about the Dark Tower movie, the best thing about the Dark Tower movie was that they cast that character as the main character, even though he wasn't anything like the character. The movie itself was just absolutely awful regardless. Yeah. But yeah, it's tough when you have a book that
you love.
And some books are very ambivalent about their characters and some books are not. And in that case, it was very not ambivalent who this character is and what they are and what they look like. And you should be able to express your dissatisfaction with those things without just immediately being called racist or homophobic or all of that stuff. But I agree with you. The thing that's harder to get over is changing the character itself.
Yeah.
Not the I can get past who's playing a character even if it doesn't match what the book said they should look like or what my headcanon said they should look like. But when they go a step further and change the fundamentals of the story, that's when it's like, okay, now you are adapting this from a book and you should be adapting it in a way. Like you're gonna lose viewers if you continue
and I
to
suppose they could
veer that far
backpedal on that and be like, oh, she was just nervous. But they put in that part about Violet talking to her about not being able to form sentences for a reason. I went back and watched. She did make a face after the kiss, and it was just really disappointing to me because, like I said, I started to come to terms with it, and I'm like, Michael was too good. He was too good. So we had to cast a woman because no man is really that good. I get it. Fine. Bring in Michaela. But it's the part that I had issues with was that. And I think it's very hurtful. Not only do I think it's hurtful, I think it's harmful, and I think it's dangerous to be throwing out accusations that people are homophobic if they were a little disappointed about that. And I do think as book fans, for any of the characters, you're allowed to feel like an attachment to it. So it's time to just put the books to the side, the show to the side. Since then, the showrunner has come out, said some more off-the-wall things, and I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, it's just... And she was referring to other characters like Benedict and Eloise. And I think you should still stick to like the bones and the stories that resonated with people, but you can change some of that. So I hope they are able to tell a good story, but I'm not going to lie. It was very disappointing, and it really disappoints me more that I think it was done for shock value when they had opportunities that were already within the script, within the stories they were telling to do a good job and with representation. And I think they fumbled the bag, and I think they made it worse for everyone because now the fandom is already a little bit toxic, but now you have people fighting, sending actors hate, and they could have avoided that.
Well, at least you have 2 whole years to cool off.
And don't even get me started on that. Why the 2-year wait? I'll never know. At this point, like, people are like, are we going to get Hyacinth and Gregory stories? They're the youngest Bridgerton siblings. I'm like, well, at this glacial pace, they might be in their 60s.
Well, you clearly liked it enough that you've rewatched it. What'd you say, 3 times? And you watched the first part like 4 times?
Yeah, I kind of do my, like, though, you know how sometimes I've done my wacky Lord of the Rings watching where I watch all my favorite scenes?
Yeah.
I've kind of just been watching a lot of the Colin Penelope scenes, and since they had so few, it doesn't take me very long to get through the last 4 episodes, but I definitely think part 2 was better. The carriage scene was still peak for the season.
You mean part 1 was better?
Part 1 was better, yes. I can't even think straight right now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of We Watch TV, a podcast about the TV shows we watch. You can find more from Hope and Daniel on Instagram at We Watch TV Podcast. Drop us a line if you like the show, have a question, or a recommendation. You can find Hope on Twitter at Lil Runner and Daniel on Twitter at The Real Hobo Dan. Music for today's podcast was provided by Your Tunes from Pixabay. Artwork was created using the AI program Midjourney with prompts written by Daniel.